Hey guys, so my name is Kevin Gerdes. I have the YouTube channel Kevin Adopts, and you guys may have seen our first video that we did on this topic, Kevin Talks Foster Care, a couple months ago. When we're getting back into things, we had a little bit of a speed bump in the road because I am now a new foster parent myself and needed to take some time to just get into the life of a newborn, and schedule is no longer mine, it is his. So I do what he needs me to do. So now that we're back, I'll give a refresher of who I am, who's in front of me, and what we're doing today. So when I started my process with becoming a foster parent, I knew nothing about the foster care experience. And the process for that for me was to Google, and I found an agency that's licensed with my county. And then I went on YouTube. And when I got to YouTube, I searched foster care, gay men. I wanted to find men that looked like me, were living lifestyles like that were gay men, just like me, maybe single like me, and going about parenthood. And I could not find it on YouTube. I wanted to see people like myself. And that is when I decided to start my channel and actually reach out to gays with kids. And boom, we're here talking to other gay men who are fostering and are single and doing this, by themselves. So with that being said, that is why we have Arin here as well, Arin Lopez, who is the father of two young boys that you came into your life through the foster care experience. And I would love to hear more about that. If you could tell people maybe a bit more about your story. I think it would be nice to hear a little bit about the before and who you were as a person before becoming a father, what led up to that, and maybe that person, and then how that sort of changed you, and then maybe a little bit as comfortable as you are about, talking about your boys in a public setting. So let's meet you, Arin. Tell me more.
Well, awesome. Thanks for having me today, because I love watching your videos and knowing some of the perspectives that you have. And congratulations on your placement. It's not easy at all, but the number one thing that we should talk about today at some point is that your life is not about you anymore when you become a foster parent. So, but a little bit about me, I had been single for such a long time, but growing up, I never really thought that I could have kids. I always thought that I had to get married in order to have a family. And just when I grew up, marriage between two men wasn't a thing. Same-sex marriage was not allowed. So it really was, for me, one of those situations where I just kind of wrote it off. And I thought, I'm never going to have a family of my own. And so since I had been single for such a long time, I thought that was the first step, was finding a relationship and then starting a family. And it wasn't until I turned 40 that I started thinking, why do I have to have a relationship first before I can start a family? So I really considered it, the seeds were planted of starting a family. So then it just so happened around that same time, there was a person close to me who had a tragedy in their life, and the possibility of my taking in her children was very much a very real thing. So it was discussed, and fortunately it didn't end up being that way. But I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to take in some kids who need a safe place to stay, who need a stable environment, and really are craving that security from someone, then why can't I foster? So I live in Arizona, and I looked into it, and I thought, there's no way they're going to let a single gay man foster children, because we've all heard, the old, outdated, ridiculous, I guess, not even rumors, but just like, what do you even call those?
I think stereotypes. I think just, I don't know. I think you did a good job, really, but also myths. Stereotypes. Myths. Yeah.
And so I thought, there's no way that the state, a government institution, is going to allow me to have foster kids. So I contacted a local organization here called Child Crisis Arizona. And it just so happens that the CEO at my company knows the CEO over there. So It was kind of one of those personal messages to this person to say, do you all welcome gay men and single gay men? And the CEO responded and said, absolutely, with open arms. I knew that was my agency at that point. I knew Child Crisis Arizona was the place to go. So I applied to be a foster parent. And here in Arizona, we went through 16 weeks of training, the home inspection. You know, they give you all the worst case scenarios. They really let you know what it's like to be a foster parent. But they don't sugarcoat it. So they don't say it's all roses and there's only babies and newborns and infants. I mean, they basically say, here's the reality. In Arizona, we have about 20,000 kids currently in care, in foster care. And we only have about 4,000 to 4,500 foster homes that are available right now. I thought, I've got to be able to do something with this. So went through all of the classes, had the home inspection. Everything was great. And even before I got licensed for, I opened just one bed. And I said my age range was newborn to 5 years old. And so I had someone contact me and say, even before I got licensed, like the official stamp of approval from the state said, we have this placement, we have this little boy. He just turned 3 years old, and we think that you'd be a good fit for him. And, you know, would you like to meet and see how things go? And I said, sure, I'd love to do that. We set an appointment the next day. And before hanging up, she said, by the way, he comes with a younger brother. See you tomorrow.
Sneaky.
Oops.
How old was the younger brother?
He was 18 months old. So they're 17 months apart.
Oh my gosh.
And right, exactly. And so I didn't get much history on them. And that's the thing with foster kids is depending on the situation, you're getting as much information as the bios are willing to cooperate and tell the authorities, or you're not even getting any information because bios aren't available to share that information or have that history or that background. My particular kids were in foster care for 635 days total. And the agency, the state, was having a hard time placing them together. So they actually stayed in a crisis shelter for 7 months without any home. They didn't have any stable living their entire lives. They didn't know what it was like. They were in and out of homeless shelters, so they didn't know what it was like to live in a home environment ever in their lives. So there was a big learning curve there. And I went to meet them, and they were extremely shy. They were very, very weary of adults. They didn't want anything to do with adults because I think inherently they just didn't trust adults. Absolutely. And that's the thing also with foster kids, especially at certain ages, that these kids have seen a lot of trauma. They've been through a lot of trauma. And I heard you talk with one of your guests before about how these kids didn't ask for this. And, you know, the stigma around kids who are in foster care. And really what we should be doing is understanding that it's not their fault. So that was a big deal for me when I first met them. And even to this day, some of their behaviors and some of their traumas from the past will bubble up to the surface. And I consciously have to remember that it's not their fault.
Absolutely. That's an amazing story because, okay, so I want to kind of backtrack and like ask you some questions, maybe pick your brain a little bit about that part of your story, because I think it's really important that we obviously, and I'm sure you'd agree, educate people as much as possible so they have more of an insider's point of view on foster care, of the good and the bad, right? Or not bad, but the uncomfortable. Because I do think that the agencies, rightfully so, will tell you the dark side, because I think that they want to make sure that you're aware, because the reality is when you're in foster care, you can call that agency any moment of any day and say, come pick these children up. And that is traumatic to children. So they want to make sure that people are aware of how difficult this can be. I think it's a beautiful thing that we kind of have this gap between when this, conversation started, Kevin Talks Foster Care, and now, because I have, more of an insider perspective of it and see the roller coasters of the system and how difficult it is. I started my journey with this idea that anyone can foster, yes, but I don't at this present time know that it is right for everyone. Just like I don't know that surrogacy is right for everyone. I can tell you right now, I could not do surrogacy because I'm too controlling. I would want to know what, the birth mom is doing every day, what she's eating. I'd want to move her into my house because I'm too controlling, right? And in a way, there's a little bit of the system kind of works for me because I didn't get an opportunity to micromanage all of that. But when you went when you were going to the agency, right, and you were making the calls and getting everything started, what was that process like for you? Was it short? Was it long? I know here in LA, I've heard from people that some people take a year to get licensed. I was licensed in like 4 months, but I do things very quickly. What was that process like for you?
It was a relatively smooth process. I think that all is dependent upon the agency that's licensing you through the state themselves. How much do they have their stuff together? We have several agencies here that welcome single gay men, lesbians, welcome our community with open arms. And so, but they really have their stuff together. They're very well managed. And so it didn't take long at all. The longest part was just attending the weekly classes. At the time that I went through, we had to go in person, but now they're doing them online. So, so it's much, much easier in that aspect of it. So it didn't take long at all besides the actual classes themselves.
I think that, people, it's good to let people know that like this doesn't, and even in the process of getting licensed, my perspective was always that I was told like, you can do this at your leisure. Like you can do it quickly. You could take as long as you want. No one's pressuring you. And I like that because it gives you some ownership on how quickly you want to do this. Because like you said, they told you before you got your license. And the same happened with the last person that was on the show, Steven. And I've heard with many other people, as soon as they knew you were getting that license, they're calling people the day before it's going to get approved and all of that. So you've got these two boys, she's like, oh, by the way, he comes with a brother. You're single. I'm going to ask this question because a lot of people ask me this. How do you do this by yourself on one income with a child? I have my thoughts, but I'll let you share. Like, what are your thoughts? You're getting 2 kids, the possibility of 2 children, young children that require a lot. Like, what were your thoughts if you're open to talking about the financial aspect of that in itself? Never mind just like parenting 2 kids by yourself, young kids.
The financial aspect is something that you should definitely consider. I have a very comfortable financial situation and a very stable job that I've been in for 10 years. So it was not a concern for me. And most states, they do give a subsidy to their foster parents. I can't think of a state that does not. It's not a ton of money, but you're certainly not going to get rich doing it. But it is enough to maybe pay for daycare or whatever it is you may need. And then here in Arizona, they're on part of basically the state health insurance plan. So so all of those things are taken care of. And so depending on how old the child is, I mean, feeding an extra tiny mouth is not really that much of a financial burden. I could I could stand to lower my portions of my food a little bit and share them with someone else. But So it wasn't much of a financial burden at all, but it certainly was a consideration. I looked into that a lot before I fostered.
I really agree with that. And I'm glad you said that, like that was your thoughts, because honestly, it's really not that difficult financially. There are some things, and getting everything, the cribs and all of that stuff, but yeah, you're going to spend money on that. But honestly, a lot of it can be donated. There's a lot of gifts, that people give you. There is a subsidy from the state, and yes, no, it's not huge. I do think it depends on the city you're in and how they judge that. But one thing that I don't know that a lot of people understand or know, which you did just bring up, is the amount of resources that are available to kids in the system, in the foster care system, like their health insurance. I'm not sure about Arizona. You can probably educate us. At least in LA, their Medi-Cal continues until they're 18, even after adoption. So that health and care is a major costly thing that you just, that money can be diverted elsewhere in that child's life. And, there's so many resources that these kids have. And I think one thing that we don't see with people when they're talking about foster care are how these children are supported, from their mental and emotional state to their physical and their needs of food and all of the other things that they need. Like the state, their first priority is the child, but can you comment on any of that stuff?
The first priority is the child. So for single gay guys, I went from being a single gay guy, a bachelor, quote unquote, that would just go out and socialize almost every night of the week and have my social life. And I went from doing that to having 2 young kids in my care, and literally overnight. And it was one of those things where it is kind of a wake up call, because I think the biggest adjustment for most foster parents is the need to just kind of put your needs on the back burner for a little while that adjustment takes place. When they first get placed with you, they have to do medical appointments, dental checkups, all of those things. If they haven't been done recently or at all, then you have to do, there's maybe some behavioral health or psychology or therapy, or, depending on whatever it is. I chose not to have any medically fragile children as part of my license at first, because I just wanted to make sure that I was prepared for success. And that's another aspect of it, is besides understanding that they do have a lot of appointments and maybe they do need to meet with a lot of specialists, there's also meetings with attorneys and their guardians.
Yes.
All of these folks going to court meetings and hearings. Those things are important for them as well. The other part of it, though, is that they need to maybe be enrolled in school or daycare. So you've got to take tours of those places and see if they accept the state reimbursement and, et cetera. So at first it's a little chaotic, but that certainly does kind of calm down a bit, and it's so much easier to manage. And if you're an organized person, then keeping those appointments is very simple to do.
I think the difficult thing is, you're right. All of those things I'm currently in the middle of, and but the bigger question, what I think people need to think about when they're debating, do I want to foster children, is outside of the finance. Like, I don't think financial is the number one question. I think the number one question is, do I want to parent a child? Like, it is the most taxing thing I've ever done in my life. However, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. And I always say, like, those two things usually do not go hand in hand with me. Like, if it's difficult, I'm not trying to do it. But are you prepared to date less? Are you prepared to figure out things that you've never had to figure out before? And if you're doing this with a newborn, or even any baby in the first 6 to months to 12 months, like the sleepless nights, and that is very, very difficult. But guess who else has to deal with those things? Biological parents who do keep their children. They all go through sleepless nights. They all go through daycare. They all, when the mother and the father come back from being off of work after 4 months or whatever, they all have to tour the daycares. They all have to think about money and extra things. Like, none of this is, exclusive to foster care. And I think because the foster care system in America we've only heard so much negative about the system, and we always only hear so much positive about biological birth and parenting, that we don't like relate the two together at all. Like, because the reality is, you and I are doing everything that biological parents do for children, So,
well, here's how I looked at it, Kevin. I looked at it as less about becoming a parent, because for me, fostering is, you mentioned in a previous video that the case plan is usually reunification. And so when that's their case plan, I'm not even thinking about adoption at that point. And so when these two were placed with me, we weren't sure that it was ever going to go from reunification to severance and adoption. So my mindset and my perspective was, I'm taking in two friends that need a little bit of help. They need some safety, they need some security, they need some stability, and they need a lot of love. And I would do that for a friend who was in need. I would take them in temporarily and really give them whatever they needed in order to start them out successfully on their new path. And so that's how I looked at being a foster. I don't even consider myself a foster parent at first, because I wasn't their parent. I was a foster home, and I was a place that they could, they could trust, and that they could, work on really just learning how to worry less about their safety and security, and worry more about being kids. And that's the way I looked at my role. It wasn't, I'm a new parent and my social life is going to suck. It's, I'm helping some friends who are unable to help themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And it is the truth. And, like we've talked about in other videos, like, reunification is the first step. That's the first step. And I am actually I'm glad you mentioned this. And as we wrap up here, I'm a big advocate for, if you want to go through the foster care system for adoption, that is okay. Because I've met a lot of people in different groups on social media apps or whatnot that kind of throw a spear in you if you mention you want to adopt a kid in foster care. And that is why I entered this, was to get to adoption at some point. However, I am fully aware that reunification is real, and that's the first step. I've told the county social workers, I said, I do not believe, I believe that the only way, I call him Baby S publicly, that Baby S would be better off anywhere outside of me is with his biological parents. That's it. So it's like, while I support reunification, I'm not going to lie that I do want to adopt. I want to adopt him, so long as it is an option for me. And I found that in the county of Los Angeles, they actually want that. They want to know that there is permanency in these children's lives. So it's like this weird, they want to know that you understand that reunification is real, and when appropriate, they're going to bring this child back to the biological family, if that happens. But they also want to know that, should it not, that you will adopt, because, which I like, the city seems to understand the amount of trauma when we are moving these kids to and from different homes, or whether they're biological or not. Like, it really affects them long term. So I like everything you're saying, and your approach when you started this. To finish up here, can you tell us about when things switched over from reunification to adoption for you, and how you felt, and even how your kids felt?
It became clear and very evident up front that soon after placement with me, that the bios were just not going to be fulfilling the terms of their case plan. So they weren't submitting for tests, they weren't going for visits. When they did have visits, they would not become prepared. The visits would be cut short. That's if they even showed up at all. So it was very apparent that they were unable to, they really just didn't have the tools to be parents. And so when we saw those patterns happening, week after week, we knew that this was probably going to go to severance. And then the final, I guess, the final notification to us that this was not going to be reunification was when both parents fled Arizona and didn't tell anybody that they had left. So it was an abandonment issue at that point, and then we just had to let the legal system play out. So it was very apparent early on. But yeah, that's at this point, how my kids feel about it is they know fully that. I tell them that I saw them when they were babies, and you guys are just little babies, and they laugh and giggle like that. And I tell them they were born in another state and they weren't born in the same state as me. And I tell them when I met them, these were my impressions, and since we became a family, all these things. So to them, it's very typical and it's very normal. And now, and I want to say that there are a lot of single gay men out there who are looking to do the same thing. I think it's starting to be more of a thing. And it's evident in the fact that, shortly I would say probably about a year after, maybe a year and a half after I had them, probably actually about 2 years, you can edit this part out. I would say that about 2 years after I had them and we become a family, we were featured on Gays with Kids, and someone on there saw it and reached out to me. I mean, a lot of people reached out and said, they send the usual comments and good for you, or things like that. And there were a handful of gay guys who would reach out and just say, I want to do what you've done. Can you help me? What were some of your trials and tribulations, your successes? And one particular person caught my eye. And so his name is Derek. And so we started chit-chatting about this, and it kind of turns out that he wanted to do the same thing. And so it just so happens he was visiting Scottsdale at the time.
Wow.
And so we made plans to meet up. And I think from there, we just really hit it off, and we'll be married this summer. So
shut up!
So we have Instagram and Gays with Kids to thank for that. But the thing is that there were, for him, it was also the same thing. Why do I need to be in a relationship first to start a family? So now with our kids, we celebrate the day that the three of us became a family, me and the boys. And then now we're preparing to celebrate the day that we adopted Derek, and he joined our family. So for them, this is how our family was made. And the key is that we keep teaching them that families are all made in different ways, and they all look differently. They all, some people have one parent, they have two parents, two moms, two dads, one mom, one dad, or no moms and dads. They might have grandmother, older sister. So we tell them that there's all different types of families out there, and we prepare them to deal with those situations at school. We let their teachers know. So for them, this is a normal, typical life. And for me, it is also a normal, typical life. We just look a little bit differently, and our family was created differently than the traditional routes.
I need to get my microphone and just mic drop. That's beautiful. And it's the best way to end this. It is, I think, gay men fostering are probably, and I say gay, but I truly do mean LGBTQ plus people fostering are amazing people to for the world to look to foster, because we have already lived lives that we've had to adjust, mold, we've experienced trauma, we know what it's like to hide, and then to come out of that and then have to walk someone else through life that has experienced those same things and teach them how to navigate life post those things. LGBTQ people are the best for it. So, man, that is a beautiful story. Beautiful story.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Kevin. Don't you think that there's like gay men know how to pick their chosen family? And I feel like that's exactly what's happened in our situation. So we have chosen to be a family, and so that's the route we're going to go.
I love this. Man, we're done. We're done. This is beautiful. Oh, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Guys, if you want to check out let's give people your Instagram handle, and we'll make sure this is in the comments, the description, but what's your Instagram or things like that?
It is my name, just with an underscore in the middle of it. So Arin_Lopez.
Awesome. So ARIN, Arin _
right.
Lopez. Okay, cool. So check his Instagram out, follow him. And then if you want to follow my current journey with baby S, I vlog style everything on my YouTube channel. Just search Kevin Adopts, it'll come up and you can get to know me more there. But we're gonna have more videos, so make sure you check out more of this conversation on the Gays with Kids channel. So thank you so much, Arin, I appreciate it.
Awesome. You're welcome, Kevin. Thanks for everything you're doing. Take care.